Hey, so happy anniversary to me. It is my 20th wedding anniversary, and I'm also awaiting the results of the election. But that's not that's not what I'm going to talk about right now. I am going to talk about this lockdown we're having in England. And so I got to write a article for Premier Christian Radio yesterday, and it's kind of made some rounds. Had a few objections. I just want to address those. These are objections about loving your neighbor and about church not being a building, but people. Before I continue, please like and subscribe, and you can continue to engage in the conversation because we'll release future videos on this. And please comment. I'd love to hear what you have to say in the comment section. So, first of all, Christians should support the government-forced lockdown because Christians are supposed to love their neighbor as their self. Well, I love my church members, but I also love my non-Christian neighbor. One of the reasons I resist the government-forced lockdown, it's not just for our church members, but I love my non-Christian neighbor, and I believe that the best thing for them and their families is because they know each other and they know the circumstances of their family, and they know about their grandmother who lives in another house and their sister who suffers with mental health and depression, and they know this kid, and they know situations that they are able to assess, take information that the government can provide. So the government can provide, say, okay, this is the likelihood of you catching the virus, and if you catch it, this is the likelihood of you dying from it. Then that family takes that information and they decide for themselves. Maybe it's not best for that family to be locked down when they have a sister who lives by herself and suffers from depression and might possibly commit suicide. Maybe the nan is in her 80s, and yes, she's more likely to catch coronavirus, but she also is battling cancer, and this is probably going to be her last year of life. Is she really going to spend the last year of her life lonely, apart from her children and grandchildren? Shouldn't the grandmother even have a say-so in how she wants to spend the last year of her life? Maybe she knows the risk. Maybe she's well aware of the risks, but she's conscious that she might really die of something else and spend the last year of her life alone, not getting to see, touch, hold, hug her grandkids. Shouldn't I love my neighbors enough to let them decide among their family dynamics who they're going to hug? I am not going to support this nanny state idea that Matt Hancock or Boris Johnson necessarily knows what is best for everybody in the whole nation and every family circumstance, and this one-size-fits-all approach. I think the government, yes, they should provide information. Yes, they should provide advice. They should let people know what's going on. Absolutely. But the government did not give my non-Christian neighbor the right to visit their sister or to hug their grandmother. That's just a natural, God-given right. The government did not give them the right to hug, and the government should not be able to take that away. The government can serve people by giving advice, but the nanny state idea of Westminster knows best. No, I love my neighbor too much. I love my neighbor too much to have a government-forced lockdown. Now, can there be a voluntary lockdown, voluntary isolation based on wise input and advice? Yeah, absolutely. But the family should decide that, not Matt Hancock. That's one thing, loving your neighbor. The second thing is the church is not the building. The church is the people. It's my anniversary, by the way. So the church is not the building. It is the people. Yeah, absolutely. So as a church, we are the congregation, the people of God. Christ calls us to gather and assemble. When Christ says, when two or three are gathered in my name, I'm there in the midst of them, both in the Old Testament and the New Testament. The Old Testament uses this word, the assembly. The New Testament, the word congregation or body. If the eye thinks it can be all by itself, what happens? And no, it needs to be plugged in with the body. The eye, the ear needs to be put together in this vital network of relationships. There's the laying on of hands. There's the breaking of bread, the sharing of the cup of the wine. There's the baptism. There's so much. Jesus didn't just send us a Zoom call or a phone call. He became incarnate and he dwelt among us. And I'm thankful for phone calls. I'm thankful for Zoom. I know good things can come of those. But ultimately, that's not the New Testament call. The New Testament call is to come together, to embrace each other, to love each other. Now, at times, does that need to be done wisely? Yes. If there is a pandemic of the sort like a Spanish flu, where it kills 5% of the whole population, might there need to be wisdom and certain caution set up when we gather, just how we do that? Yeah. Should that maybe be up to the local church leader who knows whether they have an old congregation of people in their 80s who are very susceptible? But what if you have a congregation of young people in their 20s and 30s? And the chances of them dying of COVID is 0.001. Like the chances are about as high as them dying being struck of lightning. Does Matt Hancock and Boris Johnson really know what's best for every church to issue a one-size-fit-all thing to every congregation? Really? Well, we need a building. In November in Britain, we need a building. Buildings are not technically necessary, not according to Scripture, but that Scripture is written in the Middle East, and out there it's probably pretty easy to have an outdoor meeting. In November in Britain, getting people in their 80s, people with toddlers meeting out in a field, that you see the toddler kind of crawling around in the mud and the old person sitting there shivering in the wind and the rain. And it's possible. Technically, it is possible for a congregation to meet without a building. Absolutely. But is it best? Is it best for their physical health? I don't know. I would say a building's not necessary, but this time of year in a place like Britain, it's really helpful. I want to hold on to my building because I love the people of my congregation, and I want them to be healthy and not see toddlers covered in mud or old people catching colds because we've met outside in the wind and the rain. And if you're a church leader, you should too. I would not willingly hand over the right that God gives church leaders to call the assembled people of God together for worship. I would not hand that right over from church leaders to the government, even if Ebola was ravaging our land, killing 20% of the population, and there was bodies stacked in the street. No, because this government has a tendency, don't take my word for it, study 20th century history for yourself. Government, when it takes rights away from its people, it is very slow and reluctant to give those rights back. China, Venezuela, just go through. When does a government take rights away from the people, and then the crisis, whatever the crisis is, an earthquake or terrorism or a pandemic, well, now you can have your rights back. Like, how often does that actually happen? Sometimes maybe, but it's not the tendency. If God gives rights to the church leaders to assemble the people of God, they should hold on to their right. And sometimes they should protect their people. Maybe they should skip some Sundays. Maybe they should, but it should be the call of the locals. And we do this because we love our people and we love our neighbors. And a government-forced nanny state where they determine what's best for everybody, supporting that sort of move is not a loving thing for anybody involved. It's not even loving for Boris Johnson and Matt Hancock to give them that sort of control. It's unhealthy for their souls. So be a loving person. Resist the government-enforced lockdown. Please like and subscribe and leave a comment. Love to engage with you.